Today's video is sponsored by our good friends at Famous Faces and Funnies, located in Melbourne, Florida. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, our good friends at Docking Bay 94, located in Boca Raton, Florida. Check us out on comicsandgames.com. Hello, welcome to the exciting episode of Codename New to Vero 2. Hi, I'm your presenter, Shabu Are You. Well, issue number 2 in this Non-Hama, A Real American Hero book by Paul Lohr has gotten quite the response. I've been seeing everyone's feedback on this and a lot more negative than positive. Now going in, I said that this is going to be really different. We're going to see a lot of things that may upset some longtime traditional fans, and that is expected. But, we need to go in with an open mind because there's going to be a time that Larry Hama is going to be done writing. Now, I'm not saying this is the answer, and I'm not saying that I liked the first issue. It had a lot of faults, and I discussed that with a lot of people. There is a Pakistani guy who is Flint, essentially, and it's just a mirror image of Flint. I don't know why they didn't use Flint, and I'm saying that as a brown person. I don't understand why they couldn't just use Flint. And also, they kind of like SJW used a lot of the fact that they pointed out the lead character was homosexual. There's nothing wrong with that, but why is there a need to point that out at every turn? I didn't understand that. It doesn't diminish from who he is. So let's look at the cover variants for issue number 2. We got just 2. I said issue number 2 is the most important issue in any comic book during the history of time. It is the one that will see if this series will stick. And after reading issue number 2, I'm beginning to feel a little bit more optimistic. Now you have to be open-minded and can't be dejected. Just take it with a grain of salt and enjoy it for the story that it is. I mean, we literally started off with a bang with Major Blood assassinating Duke right from the get-go. What a crazy dynamic to start off, and you have to applaud Lohr for doing that. So we begin this issue with Scarlet grieving at Duke's memorial. Now in this GIJoe, leadership is Hawk, Duke, Scarlet, and Stalker. So at least that's a familiar dynamic. And we see that she's having a tough time with her grief and is just enraged. We know from the Marvel run and in IDW, Hawk is a dick, and I mean that in the most respectful way. He tells Scarlet acceptance is the first step to surrender, but in the case of grieving, it's the last. Hawk is someone you have to pay attention to because he will exploit his guys and send them down the river, all in the purpose of the mission. That's the most important thing. You have to. As a leader, the sum is greater than the few, and you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. We rejoin Tiger settling in with his new teammates. He is embarking on his new life. As we showcased, this GIJoe team is not an elite fighting unit, but a cluster of regular folks. Essentially, they are the Viet Cong of this resistance against Cobra. We see this Joe team is really divided. Some are optimistic, while others are pessimistic, going up against Cobra. Essentially, they're a string of individuals, and we all know from either sports or war, if you have people like this, it's guaranteeing failure. Everybody has to have one heartbeat, one mind, have each other's back going into the fight. But this Joe team is all over the place. This was the first redeeming quality over issue number 1 for this book. I think for Lohr to showcase that is very important and believable. Think about it. I'm sure there were soldiers behind Washington during the Revolutionary War that felt like this. Behind the North or the South, there were soldiers that felt optimistic and pessimistic. Unless they all came together, that was the only way they had victory. So we see the Joe team in turmoil internally with this notion. Going back to the issue, so one half of the team is trying to help Tiger settle in, while the other half are saying, yeah, he'll quit anyways, and discourage him. It's like they're in GIJoe high school. They have lunch together, and then they go off to quote unquote classes. And we see Scarlett is one of the instructors in this class, and she's teaching them, I guess, self defense 101 combat. Tiger is a typical new kid in school. Is anybody detecting how cheesy all of this part is? Look, they're even raising their hands, for God's sakes. But, I mean, again, I've been saying this. There is going to be some bad and some good. It's just the entire journey, the entire ride. And what matters is at the end if you had fun. So just bear with all of this cheesiness. So Tiger gets his ass kicked. And I guess he wins his team over, or he wins Scarlett over, because he keeps getting up and wanting to go again. And the reason for this is he's like, I just want to fight. I've never got into a fight. I want to know what it feels like to hit somebody. I'm useless. Now, what's happening is that in this set of sequences, we turn this character, Tiger, who we find annoying and a pain in the ass, and we end up starting to root for him. That's pretty remarkable. We finally jump to the Cobra side of things, with Dr. Mindbender conducting an autopsy of Duke as Major Blood looks on. Mindbender's like, why the hell did you have to shoot him in the head? And Blood, I think this is cool as hell. He's like, well, he was about to start all of this heroism and all this stuff speech, and quite frankly, I didn't want to hear all of that crap, so I just popped him in the head to shut his ass up. I think that's freaking hilarious. We see a female doctor, who I assume is none other than Dr. Biggles Jones, and she shares what this war is all about. She states, Cobra believes in equality and opportunity through order and discipline, while GIJoe/America believe in the chaos that is freedom. That's pretty interesting. Now, upon hearing that and seeing everything that's unfolded so far, one can't help but draw the comparison to all the plot points in the original Star Wars. I mean, let's look at it. Evil Empire, you overthrew the Senate, the Empire takes over, thus spawns this rebellion, this small ragtag group against the Empire. I mean, this is essentially Star Wars. After getting the crap kicked out of him, Scarlett sends Tiger down to the medical examiner's office, where he's seen by none other than Doc. Well, this Doc is actually the niece of Carl Greer. So this is actually canon, and the GIJoe Club made a figure of this Doc, which I think is pretty cool to see that someone's carrying Doc's legacy. And Doc is near and dear to everybody, so it's good to see. Tiger keeps replaying the events that occurred during that initial skirmish with Cobra, and how he just essentially froze out of fear, and Roadblock had to come in, risk his life, and save his ass. Again, this is another important element, because we don't know how we act in a certain situation unless that situation occurs. Everybody can talk a big game that they'll rise to the occasion. I mean, I've seen these so-called hunters say, oh, I could kill all this deer. But when they're out in the battlefield, they can't hit the broadside of daylight, and they freeze. So unless you know, you don't know. And I think that's what is bothering Tiger, is that he was like, I was in this situation. I think I'm going to be brave, and I did nothing. He keeps going back to Scarlett, even though his group has gone on to another classroom, wanting to get at least one hit in, and he keeps getting the crap kicked out of him. And you see the other Joes are like, hey, he almost got everybody killed. But at the same time, they're seeing that, like in Rocky 1, you couldn't help but, even though Rocky was getting the shit kicked out of him, you turn and you start rooting for Rocky. So, in kind of a similar fashion, that's what's taking part right here. But the thing is, like, he's not seeing the lesson that he's so, like, hell bent on this that he's missing all the other stuff. So sometimes, you have to have that balance of, all right, not being overcome with rage or whatever. You have to be kind of flow with the situation and acquire knowledge and be open to it instead of hell bent, because Scarlet could have killed him and really put him out of this misery, but she doesn't. Stalker is in the middle of his demolition class when Doc walks in, like, hey, where's Tiger? So the whole class is like, oh, I guess he went home, he quit. She's like, no, he went back in and he was healthy. So the entire class gets up and finds that Tiger is still fighting with Scarlet. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, and he comes out and he confesses. He's like, they're like, you want to get one punch in on her? And he's like, no, I want to hit somebody. I was totally useless to you guys. I'm so ashamed of myself. I want to be a soldier. I want to be part of this team. And I'm letting everybody down by freezing. This moment kind of like unifies everybody because they see that, like, again, the whole Rocky one thing, that they're seeing that this guy, is willing to get the shit kicked out of him just because he wants to be able to learn how to fight back. And that's what this resistance is all about, if in a nutshell, is the little guy standing up to the big tyrant, wanting to fight back. I forgot to mention that another important thing is how Stalker tells the class, and he's like, you know what, this boy has no business with the gun or whatever, but his heart has every business being in this fight. He's in it for the right reasons. It's a selfless reason. And someone that hates violence has no choice but to fight back. And that's what this boy is trying to do. He's learning how to fight back, not for himself, but for his teammates, for his loved ones that he talked about in issue 1. So the rest of the team is getting this lecture on, why Tiger is the very symbol of what this resistance is all about. And you kind of see, like, again, as a reader, you're like, all right, you kind of feel, you get the feeling of this story. So the team comes together and helps Tiger get on his feet and kind of take him out of the room. At this point, Jinx goes up to Scarlet and is like, dude, aren't you a little bit hard on the boy? And what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Scarlet looks at her like, you're the leader of this group right here. What are you going to do about it? You have a guy who's about to quit and you're just going to let him quit and not stand up for him? And at this point, Jinx flips. And you could see her toss Scarlet across the room out into the hallway. And at this point, the other guys join in because Scarlet's a handful. So they all like try to take on Scarlet at once. And they're like holding Scarlet down. And they're like, come on, Tiger, get a shot in. Like, So they all come together and gang up and beat up on poor Scarlet as a sign of unity and coming together. Their boy is down and they're like, we're going to come and pick him up and come to his aid. Like, kind of like Scarlet's now the symbol of Cobra or whatever, and they're all coming together to fight on his side and help their brother in arm. Is it a trick that Scarlet did? I think so. Scarlet's smart. Next, we jump to Hawk having a conversation about somebody. Hawk is like, time and time again, you've reached to make an alliance with me. And, under circumstances, I would never talk to you. But now the situation has arisen that we need to work together. We quickly pan back to the guys getting patched up. And they're like, hey, was this some type of plan or something? They're like, No, it was just all feeling. And we also see Scarlet, again, dealing with Duke's death and her leadership and how she's going to lead this gang now that they're finally together. And then we see Hawk again, still having this conversation with this mysterious figure about joining forces and that war is all about compromises. And yep, that person is none other than Destro. So wow, that is a crazy plot twist. And I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't wait to issue number 3. So that is issue number 2 of G.I. Joe. It doesn't have a title, but that's what it is. And again, a quick bio. This Jinx is not an Arashikage Jinx. Again, names, stuff is all different. Some same, some not the same. So this Jinx's backstory is a little bit interesting. Now, you guys know that I've been covering modern G.I. Joe for some time, and we have seen these Non-Hama books come and go. I'm surprised at the amount of feedback for this series, and it's about 80% negative, so that's not too surprising as well. And I, for one, wasn't too happy with the first issue, and I consider myself to be open-minded and, not hell-bent on having key elements. But I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm actually looking forward to issue number 3. And if you're a fan of Star Wars, the original Star Wars, this has all the elements of that. That's what makes this a really good read. And it has heart and it has character. So give it another chance. Be open. See it as a different type of G.I. Joe story. And you won't be disappointed. Larry Hama is taking care of a real American hero, but this is something different, and I'm actually enjoying it. And I think issue number 2 hit all of the elements that it needed to for this series to continue on. So I'm happy to see that. Well, that's my recap of this issue. This is Shabu Are You signing off.